Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm just sorry that my mother and dad weren't here to hear them. Actually, they were coming from San Antonio. My parents, my family don't get to have many opportunities to join me when I travel across the state of Texas, and I was delighted to think that they would have been able to come tonight, but a little hurricane got in the way, and so they let some weather keep them from coming. But it is a pleasure, a great pleasure to be here, and I can tell you, Judge Emmett, to everybody in the room, you have not been introduced until you've been introduced by your county judge. And I want to offer up a great round of applause for what he is doing for you here in the county. And of course, recognizing and having the comments made about future leaders, I think certainly to have that made by a true future leader of Texas, Judge Emmett, is certainly somebody that I think all of us need to keep our eyes on for years to come. And also I want to thank, I've got to thank this wonderful chamber and the Turkish chamber and for extending to me this invitation to speak to you tonight. It's such a treat, and I'm so delighted to bring some of my staff with me as well. And of course, to see you, Jim Murphy. Great to have you here, Representative, and I look forward to seeing more of you in Austin very, very soon. It's a delight to see you, and many old friends, and Ayez, it's wonderful to see the Nasser family here tonight. It's sort of like old times, and I hope, and it is my sincere wish that for years to come, new friendships made here tonight will become old, and the conversation will never, ever end. And the mission, thinking of the mission of this chamber, and I'm excited to hear that you're in San Antonio, my hometown, that I don't get back to very much, but in Austin, my new hometown, which I'm not living in very much because I'm places like Houston, another old hometown of mine. I tell you, if you want to run for election in Texas statewide, you ought to live in almost every hometown and cover a lot of miles. But to facilitate commerce between Texas companies and companies from other countries, to create a bridge, partnerships, networks, all these things that this chamber does and will do in the future depend on relationships. And so speaking of relationships, I want to expand a little bit on what our judge said, and it is no secret to you here in this room that Turkey is an important trading partner with Texas. Even though Turkey is not our largest trading partner in this state, and we'll work on that and we'll keep working on that, the relationship has significant impact to the Lone Star State. In fact, Texas, I know as far as our exports to Turkey, exports $1.5 billion worth of goods to the country. And since we do happen to be in the energy capital of the, I will say world, I call it the world, not the country, Houston, we're better to celebrate that successful trade relationship with Turkey when it comes to products related to the energy industry. Chemical and petroleum products make about half of the exports from Texas to Turkey, and iron and steel as well. And you know, it's awfully nice to know that while so many Americans are talking about importing energy, that in fact, we here in Texas are exporting a lot of energy. In fact, the know-how and the experience to produce, explore for, and develop the reserves, energy reserves, that Turkey is also so rich in. Of course, exporting ability to find, being able to find and develop energy is something that Texas is pretty good at, and I like to think that the Railroad Commission has somewhat of a role to play in that. There is such great news recently. I was reading, I didn't know about the partnership between Turkey and Chevron and some of the other majors, Exxon, I understand, drilling in the Black Sea. That is very, very exciting, and much of the technology and the discipline to drill the wells that will be produced there was developed right here in Texas, the good old US of A, and probably right here in Houston. I might throw in at this point a little known fact that I think is pretty cool, but that might tell you what my life is like when I'm talking about thinking that a fact that more geologists than anywhere in the world live in Harris County. Did you know that, Judge Emmett? Well, that's the kind of thing I like to read at night. And I've got to tell you that maybe I need a vacation. But anyway, Turkey is geographically located in such close proximity to 70% of the world's proven gas reserves and 73% of the oil reserves in the Middle East and in the Caspian Basin. And Texas companies, engineers, and geologists will be involved in the business of producing their energy. And I like to suggest that if anybody needs advice from a Texas Energy Commissioner or how to do it responsibly over there, I bet I know one they can ask. And there's a phone number on one of my chief of staff, he's in the room right now, who can give it to somebody who needs it. It's important for countries to have reliable, not just America, but for all of the countries across the world, to have reliable and plentiful fuel, to fuel a quality of life that we have come to know and appreciate and treasure here in America. It's not just for their own economic recovery, but also for the peace of mind of people who live there and for their national security interests and for the security interests of the world. It's amazing the good that can result between nations who are mutually dependent on the success of the other, not dependent on each other, but on the success of each other. And nowhere is that illustrated more than in the benefits of trade and commerce and the beehive of economic activity that trade and commerce actually produce. So consumers across Europe will benefit from another source of energy and the diverse delivery source system for natural gas and crude that's going to go through Turkey that will come from important exploration and production partnerships. These are exemplified by the recent businesses and trade and commerce that is being talked about here tonight. And so as their economy progresses, what it means is that they will not be crippled and their consumers won't be crippled, because a crippled consumer can't consume the energy that Turkey has to produce and to ship across Europe. Well, so I like to say, let's hear it for the mutual benefits of trade and cheap and reliable energy, not just over there, but right here at home here in Texas. And aren't you glad to be a Texan? And right here in Houston? I sure am. And I can claim Houston, since I did live here. That was, again, one of the cities that I lived in before Will and I married and moved home to San Antonio. But just being here, and thanks to some of the leadership of Houston, Harris County leaderships, and your leadership, Judge Emmett, it just embodies the can-do spirit. You can feel it just driving down the street. Now, I'm so lucky to have had the opportunity to serve the state in an elected capacity for the last 10 years, first as a member of the legislature and now as the railroad commissioner. And you already said it, Ed, but yes, it's true. You may not have even known that I had nothing to do with railroads. And even more, you probably didn't even know you elected me. But you did, and I'm yours. And so if you didn't vote for me, well, your neighbor did, and lots of other people did too. And if you don't know about the Texas Railroad Commission, it's okay. I was sitting in my office right after I got on the Railroad Commission from the Texas legislature, and I had a member of the legislature, an elected leader in their community, not from Harris County though, call me, and he said, "Hey, Elizabeth, I need some help." Okay, I was ready to help. My new job over at the Railroad Commission, my new office, my new digs. He goes, "I've got this constituent, and she's got this problem with this train blowing its, whistle at 2 in the morning when it goes by. And I need you to do something about it." And I said, "You know what, Representative? I hate to tell you this. And don't hold this against me because you do vote on my budget at the Railroad Commission, but I don't have a darn thing to do with trains. So it's okay, even elected officials don't know what we have to do at the Railroad Commission, nor that your commissioners are elected across the state of Texas." But I was in Abu Dhabi and Qatar 18 months ago, and I can tell you in the Middle East, and you mentioned something I was going to say, they know what a railroad commissioner does. And everybody in the Middle East because of the history with OPEC and the Railroad Commission, they have a great grasp of what we do actually do. We used to, at the Railroad Commission, determine how much oil could be produced from a well. We were setting the allowable of how much was produced, and in fact, setting the world price of oil just right down the street in Austin, Texas. The 3 railroad commissioners were doing that. Of course, now it's wide open flow because we need all of the crude oil that our growing economy can use. But at the time, the Railroad Commission was in fact very much engaged in the world price of oil, and a graduate student at UT, I might add, my alma mater, did his thesis on how this agency, this little state agency that nobody knew about, was setting the price of oil across the globe, because we were determining how much could be produced from a well every month, setting allowables. And he took that thesis back home to the Middle East, and by golly darn it, if they didn't say, well, heck, if Texas can do it, we can do it too. And so they started a little agency called OPEC, as we know it today. Of course, now we do, in fact, Texas, we produce enough oil in this state to be a member of OPEC, and we are the largest oil and natural gas producing state, just on shore alone in the country. With all due respect to Alaska, I say, no offense, it's Texas, it's #1, not Alaska.